Andrew, so happy you finally are here in Longer Tables. Thank you for being here with me, my
Oh,
friend.
come on, of course. The answer to you for everything is always yes. That's always been the way it is.
Man, you look like you had a good trim.
I did. I have an exquisite barber. He travels with me. He gave me a quick, we're down here. We're sitting right now at Eric Repair's restaurant at the Ritz-Carlton in Grand Cayman Blue. But yesterday I got squeezed in for a quick 5 minutes, beachside trim. It's up on Instagram and it is literally exploded. In case someone has not seen it, Jose trimmed my beard, but I finally figured out after all these years what your grand plan is, which is everyone in a beard is going to be trimmed to look like you, because we all know how to trim our own face.
So we have that in common.
We now have that in common.
And
I've gotten a lot of compliments today.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. You
Yeah.
asked for $1
No, you're
for
good.
each compliment.
You're good.
So you and I, we've connected many years ago. You remember how many years ago we met first?
We dated in college.
We dated in college.
No, we met in D.C. 20 plus years ago.
Yep.
I mean, when you were, shouldn't say just focused. You were growing a family and a restaurant group and all that kind of stuff. And we met once or twice on the food side, and then like 14, 15, maybe 6. It was 2008, so 15 years ago.
New York?
Well, sorry, you're right. 20 years ago, 18 years ago, we were both judging Iron Chef, the old one on Food Network, for, they would have us there for 2 days, and they'd record 3 or 4 episodes. And we sat next to each other and whispered and ate and snickered, and we're basically like kids in the back of the classroom. But then, and I've told this story a lot, but it really is true. It was like 11 o'clock at night. We'd been there for like 2 days. Everyone is exhausted. And you said, come on, let's go. And I said, where are we going? And you just said, out. And we met 3 people at 2 different restaurants. By the way, this is a Monday or Tuesday night. These places are closed. It was literally like something out of The Godfather, where we're meeting in a closed restaurant with people like the editor-in-chief of Time magazine and all these incredibly impressive people talking about issues that were on the horizon. In some cases, they had washed up on our shores already, but you had a desire to address them, and you were creating your own syllabus of education and trying to figure out what to do to help people. And you told me that night, in between walks to restaurants, that I was going to have a platform that was going to put me in a position to help people in the world, and I should pay attention. And I've never forgotten that.
Well,
we had a lot of laughs that night too, but there was a serious moment at Anissa, which was Anita Lowe's restaurant, and we were sitting there talking to Howard.
amazing food.
Amazing food, and we were sitting
Howard, amazing person, always with the right wisdom.
Yep, very smart people, and I realized, as someone who had who was about to start traveling around the world making television, that I had an opportunity and I should seize it. So it really helped redirect my life.
Wow. You need to talk to my wife. She should hear this from you.
She should. She should.
So you and I, we bond on food. We love food.
Yep.
In more ways than one. We bond on fatherhood. You have this amazing son, an amazing boy. I have 3 daughters. I love that you say I was an advisor to you, but you've been an advisor to me, my friend. And you've been an advisor to me in watching you and how you take care of your boy has helped me in trying to take care of my 3 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
We learn from each other.
Yep, that's what friends do.
The lessons of life.
That's what friends do.
Those are the lessons of life.
Well, if you're transparent, they are. See, here's the thing. One of the things that I love about you is you were a transparent person. I have been with you, and we've sat down, and all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 people, some we know, some we may not know, and someone says, how's it going? You don't shrug your shoulders and say, great, if you're having a bad day. You will shrug your shoulders and say, and you'll test the waters, and we all do it. If we feel safe, you tell the truth. And so if you're friends with someone who also tells the truth, we've had the opportunity to talk to each other about our health, our marriages, our children, our lives, our careers, ways to help people, whatever it may be. And I think that creates, that's what creates closeness, right? If you're honest and open with someone, that's what creates closeness. So it's a great thing of having a friendship like that.
So if you people hear noises, it's because we are in the pre-service ritual at Blue.
Yeah.
Second time we are mentioning this restaurant. That's why he's our good friend. Blue Restaurant at the Ritz-Carlton in the Cayman. So all these noises is because people are working and we are occupying their territory.
Yeah, we're delaying
So
them.
I want to go back to what you said. Yes,
Yeah.
I think, are we men grow up taught that we cannot show any weakness, that we cannot show any tear, that we cannot show?
Our generation, yes.
And it's not great when men open themselves up to see that they may be also sad or frustrated or not successful for a change.
Yeah.
And I think being a father in many ways is that. I think, yes, everybody knows you as the chef, TV personality, blah, 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 blah. But if they ask me about you, I say his profession. If profession, I say with the most respect, because to me, cooking is obviously my profession. But I think we are professional dads. Doesn't mean I'm good dad, but we are professional dad. You are a professional dad.
Well, so are
you love
yes.
being a dad to your son. And not only what you may be able to provide to your son, but I have a feeling also is what you learn from your son.
Big time. You said something in there that I want to pull out that I think is really, really, really smart. We have many jobs, right? Both of us. We employ people. We're employers. We're friends. We're sons. We're fathers. You could attach 20 different titles, but is there any responsibility greater, more important, more fun, more fulfilling than being a parent? I have not found that. It is my preferred role, right? And what I love about having a child a little later in life is I was better prepared for it. I became a dad when I was in my early 40s. So, I'm glad I wasn't a father in my early 30s. I had just sobered up then. I don't think I could have done half as good a job. But it is in being a parent that you learn so much about yourself. I've sometimes told my kid, brush your teeth, and I get a response from him that's like, you always do blank, 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 blank. And he runs off down the hallway, and I sit there and I'm just like, well, he does have to brush his teeth, but he was also right about, I've learned more about myself and my own foibles through parenting than anything else. And by the way, anyone who's listening to this as a parent knows the powerlessness of parenting, right? We try our best,
They never come with instructions.
No, none of them.
We are all looking there,
None
and
of them
there
do.
is not coming with instructions.
None of them do. Yesterday, actually, your wife said to me, because we were talking about one of your kids, and she said, we just do the best job we can, and then you sort of take the bumpers off, and you sort of let them go and do their thing, and that is what we do. I'm very glad.
My wife told you that?
Yes, she told me that.
I'm jealous. My wife never told me that.
Well, you were sitting there. You were
now
you were
you're telling me I don't listen to my wife?
no, you were talking to somebody
now
else.
I only need her to listen to this podcast.
You were talking to someone else.
You got me in trouble, Andrew.
Not at all. Not at all. I've spent many years watching a lot of people navigate parenthood, but very few people share it with me. And I'm glad to have friends like you that share it with me. It's all really tough. The funniest thing is because I'm a boy dad and you're a girl dad, right?
Yep.
And I remember, God, what was it? It was it was an event that you were doing down in Washington D.C. and it wasn't. What was the thing where we went around to all the different restaurants?
Oh yeah, that was.
We did a couple years in a row.
Sunday suppers. Suppers and sippers.
No.
With Joe Nathan.
No. We went.
That was another event.
We went to like 30. There were restaurants. People would buy a booklet and they could get it stamped by visiting in all these places. And it was a fundraiser. It wasn't the DC Central Food
Dine
Fight.
and Dash.
Dine and Dash. So
That's the other one.
We did Dine and Dash.
We've done so many
for a couple of years.
Dine and Dash was great.
It was great, a lot of fun. But I remember at the end of the night, we all wound up at. It wasn't really an after party, but it was a space, and there was music, and there was dancing. It was a lot of fun, right?
Natty.
And we had been going in and out of cars, and you and I were expected to show up in a lot of these different restaurants and make sure that we paid attention to everyone who was on the list, and did as it was our thing. And your eldest daughter had a fellow with her, and I remember saying to you, I said, "Oh, isn't it fantastic? Is that a new boyfriend?" And I just remember you saying, "No, it is a friend who is a boy." And I said, "I don't know. I mean, look at them dancing. That looks like a potential boyfriend." And you were very adamant that it was not. But
I am a father. I need to be protective of my girls.
I get it.
Why do you think I have knives?
The fact
I have knives for what? For chopping chicken? No.
But what came out of that was we had a very serious conversation late at night about that aspect of fatherhood that prepared me for having that conversation with my son. And the reason that I tell it is, yes, it's an amusing story, and I do a very good impression of you. However, the more interesting part to me is that we don't have to learn everything about life ourselves. We don't have to make mistakes to learn ourselves. We can learn it from other people. We don't have to learn from we can learn from other people's successes. We can learn everything from other people. I think that's the better way to go through life. I bet you have learned more on the road in Haiti or Puerto Rico or the Ukraine in one day than you learned in 10 years in school.
University of life, my friend.
Exactly, that's it.
University of life. So
That's
how many
it.
followers you have on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of that? How many
All
millions?
combined?
All combined.
A lot. Millions. I mean,
Millions?
Millions.
And you've discussed this often, I will not say, but probably many of your followers, many of the people listening to you, they know Andrew, the super successful TV personality and beyond, food whisperer, and you've been taking us through TV and your shows around the world and push all of us to discover the wonderies of what's edible and not. Mm-hmm. You've given us wisdom, but I think what is fascinating about you is that previous life before you became that TV chef success. That moment where all of us in different ways, we go through these dark moments where we feel alone, that we feel we may have no friends, that we don't know what is the space we need to occupy in life, in our family life. But you had a very rough moment in your life.
Yeah, I mean,
can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very public about it, and I think I think what's important is for people to see that we all have times in our lives where we really, really struggle, and it's why this last Thanksgiving, I couldn't be, my son is my person. He's my person. And I couldn't be with him for Thanksgiving. And so I was very sad. And there's lots of other people. Everyone's like, oh, isn't Thanksgiving so wonderful? And it's like, well, it is, except for people for whom it isn't, right? And so I've tried to be very honest with that. And I learned that by going through my own struggles and having to make a decision when I became a public person. Am I going to talk about my addiction and my homelessness and my alcoholism, or am I not going to talk about it? And I made a very, very wise decision, one of the few in my life, to talk about it.
We thank you.
I asked other people because and they said, yes, you should talk about it, because it goes back to what you said to me 20 years ago. If you have a platform and you're not talking about what's really going on, then you're wasting the opportunity to help other people. And I, all throughout high school and college, I was an addict, an alcoholic, and eventually I could only keep juggling the balls in the air for so long. So at the same time that I was becoming successful in New York in the 80s and in Europe in kitchens and as a cook, and then moving up the ranks in restaurants and getting involved in a lot of cool things, I was also in my private life killing myself. And then eventually you just can't juggle that many balls.
One day you were in the street.
Well, it literally overnight. Recovering people make jokes about not getting the mail for 3 months, but when the things in the mail are eviction notices, eventually the sheriff of New York knocked on my door, evicted me from my last place of residence there, and I went down. I gathered a bag full of stuff and went down to the local bar that I was drinking. By the way, around the corner from the Port Authority, not a very nice bar. And I had befriended a bottle gang down there, guys who, went into the alleys and drank whenever the bar is closed for a couple hours to hose out the place.
The Port Authority in New York?
In New York. And they said, hey, we have a building that we're squatting down on Sullivan Street. And so I went down there with them, and I lived in an abandoned building for a year and stole to get, food and to get booze to drink. And I became 100% a user of people and a taker of things. And
how long that lasted?
11
days,
and a half
weeks,
months.
months?
11 and a half months.
How did you begin stealing anything?
Well,
what did you eat while you were in the street?
I stole.
You went to soup kitchens. I mean,
well, no. To be honest with you, to be honest with you,
what was your life during those 11 months in the street?
I'm not. I'm not aligned with the Salvation Army, but I donate time at the Salvation Army every year in Minnesota because I got fed by the Salvation Army. And if it was really cold, because we had no glass, it was just cement casements in the windows. I would sometimes sleep at the Salvation Army, their big headquarters on, 34th Street, Manhattan. So there's a part of me that feels I may not be alive if it wasn't for the Salvation Army. I would get up in the morning. The first thing that I would do if I didn't have any is I would go to a bodega, a little supermarket, a little tiny store on the corners of every other block in New York City. And I would go to the back and I would steal a bottle of Comet Cleanser or Ajax Cleanser, and I would open it up and I would pour it back at our abandoned building in a ring around the pile of dirty clothes that I slept on every night. And that was so that when I passed out later that evening, the rats and the roaches wouldn't crawl over me. It was very tawdry and undignified. I mean, this is not something that I'm proud of. This is a traumatic, event of my life. Once you cross, I had long since crossed lines that I never thought I would cross before. When I was functional, I would go to nightclubs in New York, discotheques and nightclubs. So this was the late 70s or 80s, so, I'm dating myself. But I knew, because I had gone to them as a customer, that at 2, 3 in the morning, drunk businessmen, I'm talking about real drunk, would come waddling out. And there was a nightclub called Area that Eric Good ran down in New York City. And on one side of it, if you walked one way, you came to a corner. If you walked the other, there was actually an alley before you crossed another street. And I would hang out in that alley. And if someone who I saw really I would just throw them down on the ground and steal money out of their wallet. And I would run and be gone. I stole purses off of the backs of chairs on Madison Avenue in those fancy, little French bistros, because that's where I had grown up. I'd grown up on the Upper East Side. So I knew that if I could run 1 block to Fifth Avenue and jump the wall at Central Park, I could just reverse my shirt and just walk down and catch the train downtown to Alphabet City, where I used to score drugs. And I would sell the credit cards and the IDs and the passports, whatever was in I would keep the cash, but I would sell everything else to some of the street folks down there. And that's how I survived. And then you could, I dined and dashed. I mean, look, food was not the most important thing. What was most important to me then, I kicked hard drugs, but I needed to, drink a bottle of cheap booze to go to sleep at night. So that was, my other priority. But, for $5.99, you could get a liter of, the cheapest vodka or rum, which were the two things that I drank. It was absolutely, it was awful and scary. And when I look back on it, it feels, because it was a different person. I was a different person.
You think government should do more to eradicate homelessness?
Has to.
To help them to come back?
Has to. Earlier today, right before we started recording, you said, what have you been doing today? And I said, I work for a couple of hours. One of the things, I'm on the board of a group called SUS, Services for the Underserved, in New York City, and our CEO sent all those of us that are so inclined, Governor Hochul's new health proclamation today, her health plan, right? Much in the same way when we were at the Biden conference on hunger, health, and nutrition, he put out a policy paper on what the White House was going to focus on over the length of his presidency. Governor Hochul just did the same thing as it pertains to health for New Yorkers. And this is a New York-based charitable organization. And finally, we have a governor who has put mental health parity, specifically behavioral health, and prioritized it in the same way that if a child needs psychiatric and behavioral health services, they can get it paid for the same way that if they broke their arm, they could get a cast put on it at a hospital. We have taken, over the course of the last 50 years, all of those people out of the system, and we wonder why teenage suicide, teen mental health issues have all skyrocketed. People blame they blame the short-term issues because they're right in front of us. They say, oh, it's existential. They're frightened about the climate crisis. They're frightened about this, the pandemic, all this kind of stuff. And while I don't discount that as having an impact, I think the more reasonable explanation is that over the last 40 years, we have taken every single bit of public health dollar for mental health issues and behavioral health issues away from those that need it the most. And we wonder why certain rates of suicide, crime rate, you name it, has gone up in our youngest age group. Bingo. So I'm thrilled, and I hope other governors, I know that our governor in Minnesota, Governor Walz, is doing the same thing. I hope that Governor Hochul's her policy paper today, which is very thorough, is adopted by a lot of other states. I am hoping, since the federal government sometimes is stymied at putting together the right kind of program, that our states and municipal governments can step in, because the problem is astronomical. It's astronomical, and the idea that we would prioritize a broken arm over a true psychiatric diagnosis that's also harmful to that child is mind-boggling to me. And I've lived through it with myself, my family, friends. I mean, I deal with this every single day, which is why I spent this morning reading the governor's health policy, because it's really, really, really important. What she's prioritizing is absolutely spot on.
And what was the moment that you realized, no more, I have to stop? Was a moment,
or
just happened gradually? It's a moment that you kicked your head and you said, "Oh man."
I had a moment and a second moment. Moment number one was I've lost in life. This is 11 and a half months of living on the street. I said, I'm a loser. There's no coming back from this. And I made the brilliant decision to check into a flop house hotel, steal some money, check into. I mean, this is the bad idea, right? And just try to somehow kill myself. I just didn't want to live anymore. I didn't want to face life on life's terms. I couldn't face. I mean, I knew I didn't have any friends anymore because they had all said we can't be friends with you. But I didn't realize that they had also said we know what the problem is, and if you could just put a cork in the bottle, metaphorically speaking, your life would return. Like you'd get well. And a lot of people were telling me that, and I just kept trying it every single other way. I need money, I need this, I need that. I didn't need that. What I needed to do was stop using drugs and alcohol. So I go into this flophouse hotel that doesn't exist anymore called the San Pedro, and I go across the street and I bought a case of Pop-Off vodka, and I'll never forget it because they were in plastic liters, and I'd never seen plastic bottles before.
A vodka.
Yeah. I mean, this is 32 years ago. So, I mean, it's like, and I'm like, wow, it's really light. And I carried this case up to my apartment, up to the room that I was paying like $10 a day for. And I had torn the phone cord out of the wall. And I just started drinking around the clock and taking pills. And I just assumed I wouldn't wake up. And I'm unsure whether it was 3 days or 4 days. I know it wasn't 2. I know it wasn't 5 for a bunch of other technical reasons that we don't have time to get into. But I came to, and there was, I didn't have this feeling of anxiety, like this 100-pound weight on my chest. For the first time in my life. I mean, I'm talking about going back to childhood. I didn't have this feeling of just like everyone else had the secret to success and I didn't. And I plugged the phone back in the wall and I called someone and I did something that I had never done before in my whole life. I said, I'm in trouble. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? And I think, those 8 words, I don't know what to do, can you help me, is kind of the secret to life. I mean, none of us, I don't know how to do origami, but I sure like origami. If I saw someone do it, I said, I don't know how to do that. Can you help me? And
they say when you're in a hole, stop digging.
That's right.
That's right.
I stopped digging. And you just
began looking for the staircase.
And the next thing, what is it? Today's January 11th. That we're recording this. January 28th, I'll enter my 32nd year of sobriety, continuous sobriety. And that's a super, number one, it saved my life. Number two, and the reason that I say it, is that if there's someone out there that's struggling or thinks that their problems are unique or that they can't make it, anyone can make it. I was alone in the San Pedro Hotel trying to kill myself, and now, all these years later, I'm sitting next to my friend in Blue by Eric Repair. Because that's how we like to call it.
We're going to have to charge
Blue
by Eric Repair. This is going to be the first commercial we ever charge.
I actually saw it. He's been walking around.
I'm going to try. He's been looking.
He's been walking around. But it's an amazing thing to me that a human being, and you preach this all the time, if you sprinkle a human being with dignity and respect, incredible things happen. It's the whole premise behind Longer Tables. And I'm talking about before it was a podcast, before it was your Substack blog. It was your idea was if we just gather people together and treat them with dignity and respect, incredible problems can be solved. That was your mantra.
So out of this amazing, literally amazing experience coming back, stop digging, and what experience what story will you tell people, what counsel, what advice to people that feel stuck That people that maybe
Super simple.
are in this same situation right
Yep.
now as you were 32 years
Yep.
ago.
Yep.
What advice you will have for people that really want to make, I will not even say a big change, just turning in another direction. Stop going in the wrong direction.
I have been active on that question for 30 years. The secret is to tell another human being. And by the way, it would be preferential. I mean, science is just any human being. I know people who have turned to somebody on the city bus and, confessed their sins and been able to get through the day, and the next day talk about it with someone who can help them in a more concrete fashion. So it really can be any person. But I think what's crucial is there is a concept that's tens of thousands, well, longer than that, but at least tens of thousands of years old that we know of, that in that truth-telling, we are sharing a piece of ourselves that eases the burden, right? And provides room for improvement and for life to get better. And if you keep it hidden and try to figure it out no one can figure it out on their own. No one can do it by themselves. You talked before about men being conditioned, especially of our generation. Don't cry, don't show weakness, don't do that. You can just keep extending that metaphor out. If we don't let someone else in, we are condemned to continue to create the situations in our lives that later put us in a position to be hurt. If we let somebody in, we can interrupt that cycle. And it's in that space when you interrupt it that you can make a change. If you don't have someone to talk to, and so I tell people all the time, if people tweet at me or whatever, they're like, I'm alone, I'm desperate, I'm drinking, I have the same problem you did, what do I do? And I'm like, switch off Twitter, open your phone and tell anyone, even if it's calling, the suicide hotline, Alcoholics Anonymous hotline, Narcotics Anonymous hotline, the hotline. I mean, call someone, call a friend, call anyone and talk to someone, because it is connecting with another human being, connecting, that is what we have severed. When we disconnect is when problems happen.
We are only as good as the people we have around us, not only in the good times.
Correct.
But in the difficult times.
Especially in the
So what you're
difficult times.
telling us is we all need to have this network
That's right.
of friends, of people.
That's right.
They don't need to be even your best friend. Sometimes it's people that you feel like it's a person you can talk to.
Sometimes it's easier if they're not your best friend.
Sometimes it's easier.
Yes. But then those people become very close to you. I mean, I remember when you came to Minneapolis with your youngest daughter and Farhan and his wife 12, 13 years ago, something like that. Farhan was doing his show at the Minneapolis Institute of Art. And you came for 3 or 4 days, and we spent that time together. And my son was there, and your daughter was. It was a great weekend. We all had a great, lovely time. It wasn't too cold. It was October. So it was a lovely time in Minneapolis. But I remember that was the first time that I remember it specifically because we were watching our kids. We were standing outside of this one restaurant, Bachelor Farmer, that is sadly no longer there. And we were watching our kids run back and forth in this alley. They were having this little reception. And we talked about fatherhood. And I told you what was going on with my son, and you told me what was going on with your daughters. And we had been, we had been friends before that. We had been colleagues. I mean, we had been a lot of things. But when you left there, you knew my darkest secrets, And so, and I can just speak for myself. That's when you connect with another human being.
Yep.
And I remember you being on, you don't get a lot of time, with your family and stuff. I remember, every 3 months my phone rings and it's you just saying, I'm just calling to see how you're doing. And that's what friends, that's the great thing. And unless you connect, it's because I shared things with you. You get reminded of them somewhere because it works for me with other people and sometimes with you. You pick up the phone and you connect. Human beings, we are. I tell people all the time, I give this talk about electricity, the lamp, right? We are all lamps, and we're holding our own cords. And what we're trying to do is find a place to plug in and get some electricity. And if we're not collectively doing that, if we're not finding places to plug in and connect with each other, our bulbs don't go off. We don't shine. We need other people.
So, moving to TV and some of your latest work, I'm very proud because you invite me to join you in one show. You made this show for MSNBC.
Mm-hmm.
And the show was called What's Eating America.
Yep.
And you did a few episodes exploring different parts.
Yep.
And in the one you invited me to be part of, I think was very interesting.
The immigration episode?
The immigration episode. We went to Congress,
Yep.
where we rented the dining room,
Yep.
where our senators and congressmen eat. We went to Trump Tower.
Mm-hmm.
To Trump Tower itself, full of beautiful people, American and immigrants.
That's right.
And we had a great meal, actually. My favorite part of the show really was being in Congress, and especially how we were able to connect what was going on in the farms of America and who was picking up our fruits and vegetables. Even more important, in the middle of the pandemic, where nobody was out, but these people kept working and feeding America, and following the food all the way to the kitchens where our senators and congressmen eat.
Yes, every single
and
food.
see the connection and who was
Right.
part of that food, and what did we learn?
Every single food that is on everyone's plate in this country passes through the hands of an immigrant. Every single piece. Of every kind. And what was...
And very often, undocumented immigrants.
That is correct. And undocumented immigrants represent a tremendous large part of our workforce. The mythology around it is actually quite interesting. Very few people understand that undocumented immigrants who work on farms in the central valleys of California pay taxes. It comes out of their paycheck, right? They send money back to their homeland, whether it's El Salvador, Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua, wherever, that helps stabilize a community. Sometimes one family at a time, provides for education, provides for food. And as importantly, when you look at the flip side, without those, we have not had visa. Well, look, you and I are both very much for immigration reform. And one of the biggest reasons that we need it is that every single farmer, crab picker, fisherman, meat cutting company, everyone that we spoke to in that 2-hour kickoff episode said we need more workers and more visas. The system is broken. We don't have as many people as we had even 10 years ago to pick the crabs, pull the lettuce out of the ground, pick the strawberries, pick the tomatoes. Can't be done by a machine, has to be done by a human being. These are highly skilled workers, and everyone is better off by having them here in our country. And they also contribute to the fabric of life generationally, in that someone may come into this country to work in food, in some part of our food system.
Yes.
And they may wind up going to college years later and curing cancer. I mean, those stories are everywhere. And without, beating that drum too loudly, because you and I could talk about it for hours, the most influential human beings, and I love pointing this out, unless you were a native first person, a tribal native first person of the Americas, every single person is an immigrant. My family immigrated here, and if we don't give opportunity, if we're not about lifting other people up and creating opportunity, then what are we doing? I've spoken to medicine men, shamans, holy people all over this world in the 177 countries I've been to. And when I find someone who I believe honestly is more powerfully connected to something than we are, I ask them the same question: what's our point of being here on planet Earth, and every single one says the same thing, whether they speak a language I understand or whether it's clicks and whistles, and they all say we're on this planet to love each other and make each other's lives better. And if we're not doing that,
Amen.
if we're not doing that, what the hell are we doing?
Immigration, my friend, is not a problem for America to solve.
That's
it's
right.
an opportunity for America to seize.
Someone very important once said that to me a long time
And
ago.
the big lie is that Democrats and Republicans alike.
That's right.
We had Republican presidents
That's right.
that they tried to pass immigration reform.
Everyone kicks the can down
President
the road.
Bush.
Yes.
And their own Congress didn't allow it. We had the opportunity with Democratic Congress, Senate, and White House to push it,
That's right.
and was not interest either.
That's right.
And every time seems everybody finger points at each other versus talking with pragmatism of why we need to make sure that
That's
those
right.
undocumented become part of America, how those dreamers, those young men and women who the entire life has very much happened in America since they arrived as babies, who they are as American as you and me, and that still we're not giving them the opportunity. And especially the many of those 11 million, maybe more, who are in the food business, who without them America
right.
wouldn't be fed. It's about time that we do something.
It's
It's
very
about time
confusing.
that we move immigration reform.
Yeah.
Let's stop finger pointing at each other for the failures, and let's ask our senators and Congress men and congresswomen to once and for all
Yes. Has to be
to
addressed.
invest in the future of America.
Has to be
by
addressed.
giving an opportunity to those men and women
Has to be addressed.
belong.
Now they're playing games with it, ping-ponging human beings in buses and airplanes back and forth, border politicians sending immigrants who are coming across our borders legally and illegally, sending them to other states to make a point, using human lives as a way to make a talking point on a Sunday morning show. It is infuriating, and what's probably more infuriating to most people is that this is not, you said it's not red or blue or left or right. This is a forward issue. If you're for big business and small government, you should be for immigration reform. If you're for big government and small business, you should be for immigration reform. If you
are a person of faith, you should
be
be
for immigration reform.
reform.
It's just it is, to me, it's the easiest yes in the whole world because it addresses a whole bunch of other issues. And like I said, we could spend all day talking about it.
So yes, it was a great show, but that's right now that people listening to us may say, "Hey, you're talking politics. You're getting into something that shouldn't belong to cooks."
Oh, you looked at my Twitter feed today.
Stick to
Yeah.
food. How
Yes.
many times they don't tell us that? Obviously, on this show, I know you got a lot of push. It's like, were you not a chef who will travel and tell us stories about food?
Shut up and stick to food.
I will say I think it says a lot about how we talk about food in this country, right? But it's entertainment or a sport. Why do you think people are resistant to talking about the serious issues surrounding food, like immigration,
Desperation,
like
depression,
like health, like obesity, like hunger?
It's their isms. It's their isms. And what I mean by that is I have found a way, you have found a way, lots of other people have found a way to talk about what I call existential issues in our daily lives, and at the same time be able to put my pillow on the bed and get some rest. Do I toss and turn some nights because I'm worried about my kid or a friend or something else in my life? Of course, I'm a human being just like anybody else. However, more importantly, I have found a way by getting into action myself where my head hits the pillow and I'm like, I did something today to push some of those issues along. I did something, right? And I think there are a lot of people who are really categorically afraid of it because they believe someone else will take care of it. They're not prepared to handle it. They work hard 9 to 5. They come home. Sometimes more than one job, right? They're working double shifts some days and things. I mean, the huge number of Americans are, and they do not have the capacity. They don't have any more energy or capacity in their life, and I blame our society for that before I start blaming the person. I think we have failed a very large portion of this country, made them very angry, and turned them against the issues. You know, when I was young, my father would grab me and we'd watch stuff on the news, you know, Walter Cronkite, and, you know, incredible things were happening, you know, in our country in the late 60s. But, you know, Lyndon Johnson, you know, and the Civil Rights Act and all of the, you know, the Clean Water Act that came, you know, 4 years after that, and so many great pieces of legislation that were achieved by talking across the aisle because everyone understood about moving forward. And it was something, did I find parts of it boring when I was 8, 10 years old? Sure. But my dad, you know, said, pay attention for 2 minutes and just watch this. And I realized the other night watching the Speaker of the House debacle as McCarthy was approved on 15th or 16th vote, I forget, was that my son, who I had said that the week beforehand, he was with me over Christmas, and I said, I forget where we were watching. I said, no, pay attention to this. This is really interesting. And he looked at me and he said, does it matter? Look at these people. They're behaving like clowns. And that was my 17-year-old, you know, and he's not a political person, right? And so I sat there, I said, you know something? We are failing. Our institutions are failing the people in this country who they're designed to serve. And I think we have a very, very serious problem. To the people who look, there are a lot of people who think that Bizarre Foods is their relief when they come home after work to be entertained for an hour, and I'm glad and I'm happy, and that's what we started out making the show. Later on, I started making the show about preaching patience, tolerance, and understanding in a world that wasn't having any of it, that was defining people by their differences and not by their similarities. And there were people who caught on to that, and I'm glad that they caught on to that too. How to motivate the people who don't care, those who are apathetic, into a position of action, I think is the challenge of our lifetime. That is the challenge of our lifetime. I mean, look, in America, only 50% of the people vote who are eligible.
Or less.
You know, I mean, that says it all right there. We failed those people and look, I know that we've made it impossible through a whole bunch of arcane laws and a bunch of BS that there's a certain percentage that we've made it hard to vote.
Hard, not impossible.
But it's very
and the counting.
Yeah,
and the counting.
It's very important to remember.
Why is countries like in Spain in 1 hour after?
That's right.
After the college close.
That's right.
All the votes are counted.
That's right.
Like 99% of the votes are counted.
Right.
1 hour later.
That's right.
Here, sometimes we're weeks and still we're counting.
Well, we had counties in the most recent election that took a week.
Nobody has more technology than America.
Yeah, it is. We have failed those people, and that is why gaining trust in government. Right? I mean, you know, democracy sucks, but it's the best thing we've figured out yet.
In America, you can order Caesar salad, no anchovies, with 2 scrambled eggs on top.
And have it delivered to your house.
And be delivered to Yellowstone, top mountain in the middle of nowhere. Yes. And we cannot get so.
Yep. We need to engage people better.
Family Dinner, your new TV show. You sit down and you eat with real families.
Yep.
I mean,
simple idea.
If you guys didn't see Family Dinner, I don't know what you're waiting. What has surprised you going through every one of those meals, sitting down with those families? What, if anything?
Well, the biggest surprise was that the stuff that people like you and I have been saying for 20 plus years is actually true. Before I made Family Dinner, I had anecdotal research that said we can put aside our differences, we can share a meal with someone and understand each other better, right? Now, we cast the show, and I have people at our production company who are very good at that. They do it. I don't put my finger on the scale. We have it, you know, over the 3 seasons and 60 episodes or whatever it is, we've had 60 different families from 30 different states, from all walks of life, you know, I mean, every type of family, even non-biological families, we have included. And after getting up from a meal with them, I am happier. I understand people better. I have more empathy and understanding of what, you know, bear trap those people are in. It has been the great educational experience that I was hoping that it would be. But it proved to me that we can always, because I've gotten to explain things that, you know, and oftentimes it's off camera, right? I mean, because the network doesn't necessarily want me to make everything about, you know, social constructs and, you know, big ideas. We're trying to make an entertainment show, but it comes sneaking through, and it's wonderful. And it actually gave me. I'm doing a cooking show, a outdoor cooking show, because I love to hunt and fish, and I decided to do that because I wanted to be on TV in front of a different audience. And so now I'm on on a outdoor channel in front of a whole different community of viewers, and able to preach what love of food can do to sort of break down boundaries. And I guess it's not something that so much that I learned as it's something that I got confirmed. It's a really, really important idea. I mean, I'm really not making a joke here. It's why we need, you know, longer, bigger tables. Right?
I like that.
That's it. If we could just share more with each other. I mean, we started this conversation talking about two friends sharing real life with each other. We can do this with other people. We don't need to bare our souls. We can just converse and actually talk about our lives. That's Eric Rapari's bringing fish in.
No, but it's somebody that almost break the door. Come in. So, my friend Andrew, if I were to sit down at your family dinner, what will I see?
Oh, gosh. You would see a lot of smile and a lot of talk. You would see a lot of vegetables on the table.
What vegetables?
You would see.
What's
Well,
your
it
favorite
depends what season. It depends what season is. The way we eat in our house, increasingly less meat, increasingly more beans, and we'll have what some people refer to as side dishes. Will occupy the majority of space on the table. 3-4 of those, you know, dishes, and some meat to share. Usually, and by the way, this is, I mean, we've eaten together enough. It's your way to eat. Give me a big piece of meat or a big whole fish, roast it, grill it, saute it, whatever. Let it rest and put it in the middle of the table with just a little salt and olive oil, and we'll just share that. And then everyone shares all the other things that go around it, and that's how we eat in our house. You know, I like to take food to work with me. I love leftovers, so we tend to cook 2-3 nights a week, and then we're pulling things out and adding, you know, we make a fresh salad, but we have, you know, half a roast turkey. I'm a big believer in more. So we always start out with, you know, whatever night of the week is I'm cooking, there's a lot of food, and then we sort of eat off that for a couple of days, and then we rinse and repeat it. But I think more importantly, it would be, I mean, there's always music, there's always people smiling, there's always people talking.
Well, I'm waiting my invitation, my friend.
That was so icy cold.
I know.
You really delivered that with an awful, there's a tear running down his cheek right now.
I'm waiting for my invitation.
I know that your door is always open to me because that's who you are, and you know my door is always open to you.
You are throwing it back at me.
You have said, you literally have taken a look. I showed you a picture of what was going on at my house 5 days ago, and you looked at it, and your eyes were so wide open, looking at how much snow was on the ground there. You were definitely thinking, yes, summer. Yep. See you in the summertime.
So, my dear friend, thank you for being here with us at Longer Tables. Until next time.
I love you very much. You're a great, great inspiration, but more importantly than that, you're a great friend. A lot of people see the public you and don't understand you put on your pants one leg at a time, and it is it's just a treat. They're not going to people. We don't get to meet and understand everyone, but the generosity of your heart extends to the people that you love in a very, very profound way. I see it in your children, who are amazing. I see it in your relationship that you have with your wife, and I adore you. I'm so lucky that I have friends like you. I'm a very blessed guy.
I'm not paying him. I swear to God, I'm not paying him. I love you. And remember, people, if you are in a hole, stop digging.
Stop digging.